Thanks for joining us here on 98 Plus. I'm Chris Bianchi. Well, the Denver Nuggets are world champions. You probably know this at this point. Just in case, I wanted to remind you, Denver Nuggets, world champions. Can't say that enough times. That's me. They joined the Denver Broncos with 3 titles, the Colorado Avalanche with 3 titles, Colorado Rapids winning in 2010, the Colorado Mammoth winning 2006 and 2022 as well. So we've got now 10
and
championships.
the Colorado Crush.
The Crush.
And the Crush. Well, this is why we've got Tom Green and Johnny Kuhrt here to give us a bit of the historical perspective. So the question we want to answer for you is, where do the Denver Nuggets rank in terms of the best sports teams to ever play here in Colorado? So Johnny Kuhrt, Tom Green joining us here. So I'll put it out to both of you here. Initial thoughts when I say, what is the best sports team to have ever played here in Colorado?
I think as the Nuggets are still in progress, I can't put them at the top yet because I want to see their body of work because this might be a multiple championship team. I'd say the best pro sports teams that we've ever seen, and it's arguable, but the 98 Broncos that went 14-2 and steamrolled the playoffs, that was an awesome team. And you look at who was playing offense and defense on that team, and it's kind of the Broncos Hall of Fame playing through that. Mm-hmm. And I like the early Avs, the 96 team. Many people like the 01 team. But I thought the 96 team was at times unstoppable and had to go through Detroit, and they did it. So I'd put them up there. It's funny for me, Johnny, because I think the secret second best Broncos team is the Orange Crush team.
77?
77 team, because that team only allowed more than 14 points in one game.
The defense.
Their defense was unbelievable. And the one game they allowed more than 14 points was because the Orange Crush offense gave up the football all over the field to the Oakland Raiders that day up there.
That's a good team. I'd sometimes say the team that could have been really good, the 2012 team that lost to the Ravens, because I think that was the best team out of that era with Peyton Manning, except for Raheem Moore.
And then you have the next team that scored 600 points and lost, beat by 600 in the Super Bowl by the Seahawks. So those would be, it's nice for the Avs and the Broncos to have multiple teams to choose from, their best teams. For the Nuggets, I think their next best team for me is, I like the 85 team, the one that had Alex and Dan and Doug was coaching them. I think, that team was really good, really fun to watch, and they ran into the Lakers and Kareem and Magic and all, but I'd put them right.
They ran into a Laker team who had at least 5 Hall of Famers on there.
Yeah, so.
And that was probably what hurt the Nuggets all the time. Even the 2000, they just played with all these great generational players against them, and that's what was so hard for them.
Too much.
Took them to 6 in that series.
09.
In 09.
Kobe and
Carmelo and Chauncey Billups, of course.
Very good, but when you got a generational player in Kobe.
But that's what's cool is this time we played and we had the generational player
Finally.
in Denver as opposed to running into them in the playoffs. Yeah, it was a secret too. That was cool.
Of course, going back to that generational player, Nikola Jokic, I know these are obviously kind of sports talky sorts of questions here because there's no firm answer on that, but where would you say that Nikola Jokic ranks in terms of the best athlete that's passed through Colorado at this point?
Oh, I think we'll see how far he goes, but he's definitely going to be in the top 5, maybe moving up just for what he's doing, because I don't think we really know how good he could be and how good he is already, because he knows plays of the other teams before they run it. He's very smart. He's a coach on the court, even if he doesn't admit it, but he's a very smart player. I think he could even move at top 3. I also put Michaela Schifrin in there
of course,
in the top 3 or even top, because nobody realizes what she's done. She's done an all-time record and still growing.
Yeah, she's the best ever. It's funny because I think of it, if you wanted to have the Mount Rushmore of Colorado sports, you're going to need more heads.
Yeah.
So instead of going with the 4 for a Mount Rushmore, I'd go with the 7 blocks of granite. They'll reference the old Vince Lombardi playing at Fordham days. And, when you get into 7, Joker's in there. Where he is, well, let's wait. Let's add him up a little bit. But you have the fixtures, those people who are immovable from that, the John Elways and the Joe Sakic's. Michaela would be a perfect example. Yeah. But then, everyone, even going back those 30, 35 years, the recency bias to forget about some of the Whizzer Wyatts and some of the players who played here, in the last century of sports. They belong there too. So you have to include them. If you have nothing to do, go to the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame sometime. It's located right at Empower Field, and you walk around there, and you'll learn so much so fast about the history of our
Jeff
great
Dempsey.
state. Dempsey, Hale Irwin. I mean, there's all these people who are there for you to learn about. So instead of just saying it's Joker because it's Joker, there are others too.
Yeah.
I guess, Tom and Johnny, I do want to ask your opinion with the Nuggets, just of course winning the title. Could you put into perspective how dominating or maybe difficult of a run it was? They only lost 4 games en route to getting the title, fairly similar to the Avs a year ago. Just put into context how good this team was.
Well, some say they'd never played a higher seed, but it seemed like besides the Minnesota series, they were always the underdog because everybody said Phoenix was the team that was going to go to the NBA and win it with Durant, and Booker. And then, of course, they're never going to count out LeBron, and Anthony. But, what do? They sweep them and they kill Phoenix in the game they needed, So, I mean, they don't get enough credit for what they did, and only losing 4 games and lose it 1 at home, that's pretty incredible in the NBA that you just lost 1. In a game they should have never lost, they just fell asleep.
Yeah, I think the most impressive playoff runs, this goes into the short list. I think that Bronco 98 team that blew out the Dolphins, handled the Jets, and then easily beat Atlanta for the Super Bowl championship. It wasn't exactly murderer's row, but they made short work out of those 3 playoff games that year. The Avs of last year and the Nuggets of this year. And you think of how many white knuckle moments you have in that. The Avs go 16-4, but you're hanging on in a couple of those games, and you're doing the what if thing, and that's how hockey's played at that time of year. And for the Nuggets, I always felt that the Nuggets that I first came to see, the high flying, Doug Moe Nuggets, always had that problem of being seen as, or possibly actually just being a little soft, a finesse team. And when you get to the playoffs, it turns into grit and grind. And what the Nuggets did last night was they showed they were grittier and grindier than the Heat were in an ugly game. And they found a way to tough it out and go through all the adversity in that game, much less their whole season. There's a lot of credit for that too. So, as far as dominant playoff teams, this is one of those 3 that come to my mind.
Johnny, you started by saying that your answer just a second ago by saying that the Nuggets were underdogs throughout. They didn't finish the regular season in a good way. They obviously had some issues with the Suns in that second round. Was there a moment for both of you where it clicked in and the Nuggets were probably going to end up doing it all and winning the NBA title?
Well, I think as a Nugget fan, I think it's tough because you've kind of been let down. Not let down, but
something's going to happen.
Something's going to happen, and you didn't feel it. And for me, it was like during the Lakers series when they won Game 3. You're like, all right, this team probably could do it because if you've been an old enough fan, you know what you know how you feel. But this team was special. I mean, like you look like Aaron Gordon. I don't think Aaron Gordon gets enough credit. Like Tom says, they had to tough it out. He's the one guy that says, "Oh, give it to me, I'll do it." Bruce Brown and KCP. I mean, those guys, they do it when they need to do it.
Yeah, I thought the statement games all came on the road. They went 10-1 at home, and not all of them were easy. Game 6 in Phoenix, the way they won that game, I mean, that game was a beatdown from go. And then going down to Miami. Miami had some momentum. They had won Game 2, and they'd proven that they could play with the Nuggets, and the Nuggets proved otherwise in Games 3 and 4. They went down there and, like you talk about, just that kind of toughness to go with all the skill, all the ability, all the practice, all the time they put in. But they were very impressive with those road games that really made it clear to the league and to those people who hadn't followed the team. They were the best team in the league. And you said they didn't finish the season well. But, I mean, they were the number 1 seed in the West from Christmas Day on. And they may not have played their best basketball, but the point for them, when it came to March and April, was just to get to the finish line and be ready in the playoffs. And they earned all the rest they got and all the teams they played that were lower seeds. They earned all of that by the way they did play their regular season.
And they were healthy.
Yeah.
And in the past, they were never healthy.
They were always coming apart at some point. And so this has been so impressive. And, You know, you think of the Nugget fan, the long downtrodden Nug Life Nugget fan, who, as Johnny was talking about, waiting for something to go wrong. And this year, everything that went wrong happened to them instead of us, and oftentimes we made it happen for them.
I think one of the good things about it is, we know a couple guys that are inside. I know one of the photographers who covered. I worked with him outside, and he covers the last 6-7 years, and he said this team was the best group of guys that they've ever had. So when you have good guys, look at what happened.
Winning can breed that, but it's also, we always talk about it when you refer reverentially to Michael Jordan or to Kobe Bryant, people always say when your best player is your hardest worker, that's a really good sign for your team. Obviously, Nikola Jokic has been that guy for this team. He's been the right teammate. And the words that Jamal Murray used last night talking about, he keeps us connected. He was the guy who everyone looks to, everyone points to, and everyone draws from, and he never wavered. He never broke. He never lost focus on what he was doing, even after they won the championship. He was so locked in and brought everyone along with him. And boy, did they step up for him as well as with him.
I kind of think back to the end of the third quarter of the game where Nikola Jokic had a pretty overt emotional, I wouldn't say outburst, but he got pretty emotional with his team. And from that point on, I think the Nuggets slowly took command of that game.
And plus, he's also a guy, when you see, he can take a game over. He'll just say, give me the ball, feed the ball to me, and I'll go get you your 2 points. He doesn't do it often, but I think the best part of watching the Nuggets, they're enjoyable to watch, the way they pass the ball.
It's funny because as soon as you said that, I thought of Eric Spoelstra, who's considered as good a coach as there is in the NBA. And his game plan for Nikola Jokic is do the best you can, fellas, because there is no game planning against a guy like that. And that makes me want to circle back to Michael Malone, who I thought was probably considered by many a guy who was going to be outcoached in almost every series. Everyone felt that Michael Malone was just right. He's a terrific coach. Did a great job. And he set the tone for that team. When you talk about the team's toughness, the 3 guys who matter most are the 3 guys who you never have to question their toughness. It's Michael Malone, Nikola Jokic, and Jamal Murray. They've all been through it, and they'll never back down. And it carried through the entire team. That personality of that team, as well as their ability to play together, is so critical, so important.
So we spent a lot of time looking back here. I kind of want to close things out by asking both of you, which Colorado sports team do you think is most likely to win a championship now moving forward? What's the next team to win it? Is it the Nuggets again?
Yeah, it's the Nuggets again because they have that stability in the roster. The Bruce Brown question, and last night, he was in the high moments of having just won a championship, but he said money isn't everything. He wants to be back. They'll have to find a way to find the money to keep him. But as opposed to losing a Burakovsky or losing a Kadri like the Avs did last year. And I talked about it last night also. You get a short summer when you keep playing. A lot of NBA teams were done 2 months ago. Those players have been on the beach. The Nuggets have had to play hard all the way into mid-June, and now their summer will be shorter, so they have to come back with that same intensity. But I'd say the Avs are close too, but the Nuggets are, I would think, the favorite.
Yeah, I mean, you get your core players are signed. Even if you lose a Bruce Brown, I'm sure a free agent will want to come here after seeing what Jokic did, because everybody, for me, it was kind of hilarious with Jokic because we all knew how great he was, but then the rest of the country started to realize it, and that's all they asked about, how this guy, we're like, well, you should have paid attention. If you're NBA fans, you should have paid attention. But they still have a great shot, if they stay healthy. I do think the Avs will be back because they'll be healthier. And like Tom says, when you have that small window of vacation, it's hard. And Jokic has already said he's asking for 2 more weeks off. And you're like, I give it to him because he's going to be ready. There's nothing about him.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most interesting thing to see if the Nuggets can go back to back.
Maybe optimistically, the Avs are the beneficiaries in that situation, though. They get the added vacation time because they lost in the first round. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, and they have personnel decisions to make still too. They still have to find a solid second center and things like that. They have some work that they have to do in their offseason with their personnel. But as long as because remember last year, just as we were finishing the Stanley Cup run, one of the first things Gabe Landeskog said on the ice when asked how to do it, he says, "Get yourself a Cale Makar." They still have Cale Makar. Get yourself a Nikola Jokic. Get yourself a Cale Makar, you've answered a lot of questions when you have those guys, and those two guys are here for a while.
I mean, you got the duels, Jokic and Murray and McKinnon and McCarr.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hard part.
I mean, we're lucky that we get to watch his, that we get to see that.
And not all of us get to watch it, though.
I can't believe nobody went with the Rockies. I'm going to go with the Rockies and Chris Bryant.
It seems that way. It seems they're due.
They're due. But Tom Green, Johnny Kuhrt, thanks so much for lending us some of that historical context to how great this Nuggets run was. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.